Dr. Hana stared at the computer screen in front of her. The numbers were the same as yesterday, and the day before that, and every day for the past 6 months. All her tests had failed. Every experiment showed the same result. Nothing worked. She pushed her chair back from the desk and looked around the laboratory. The new Busan research facility used to be full of people. Scientists would rush between workstations. Assistants would carry samples from one lab to another. The halls would echo with conversations about new discoveries and breakthrough ideas. Now, the place felt like a tomb. Most of the workstations stood empty. Half the lights had been turned off to save power. The few remaining scientists moved like ghosts through the quiet corridors. They spoke in whispers, when they spoke at all. Hana walked to the large window that looked out over the city of New Busan. The buildings stretched toward the horizon under the pale green sky of Kalara. But even from this height, she could see the empty streets, the abandoned vehicles, the houses with dark windows. Her people, the Kalari, were dying. The plague had started 3 years ago in the outer settlements. At first, the scientists thought it was just another virus. Something they could cure with the right medicine. The Kalari had defeated diseases before. Their medical technology was among the best in the galaxy. But this plague was different. It did not kill quickly like other diseases. Instead, it attacked the very thing that made the Kalari special. For thousands of years, her people had been able to heal from almost any injury. Cut skin would grow back in hours. Broken bones would mend in days. Even damaged organs could repair themselves. The plague took that away. Once infected, a Kalari would begin aging rapidly. Their cells would stop repairing damage. Small cuts would not heal. Minor illnesses became deadly. Within months, even the youngest victims would look ancient. Within a year, they would die. Hana touched the glass window with one blue-skinned hand. She was 35 years old, still young by Kalari standards, but she felt much older. The weight of failure pressed down on her shoulders like a heavy stone. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Dr. Kyung entered the lab carrying a data pad. His face looked tired. Like everyone else, he had been working day and night to find a cure. Like everyone else, he was losing hope. "Any progress today?" he asked, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer. "No," Hana replied without turning around. "The protein synthesis is still breaking down. The cellular regeneration factors refuse to bond properly. Everything we try makes the condition worse." Kyung sat down heavily in a nearby chair. "The council met this morning." Hana finally turned to face him. The Kalari Council was their government, made up of the wisest and most logical members of their society. If anyone could find a solution, it would be them. What did they decide? They have declared the situation hopeless. Kyung's voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reading a weather report. "The official recommendation is graceful acceptance." Hana felt something cold settle in her stomach. Graceful acceptance? We should stop wasting resources on research. Instead, we should focus on making our final years comfortable. Help people say goodbye to their families. Preserve our history and culture for whoever might find our world after we are gone. The words hit Hana like physical blows. She had expected this decision for weeks, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. "What about the other research teams?" she asked. "The ones working on the quantum cellular approach? The genetic modification project?" "All shut down as of today. The resources will be redirected to comfort care and historical preservation." Hana walked back to her workstation and sat down. Her computer screen still showed the failed test results. Numbers that represented months of work, years of hope. All of it meaningless now. "There is one more thing," Kyung said quietly. "What?" "Dr. Minho wants to see you." Hana's heart clenched. Dr. Minho had been her mentor when she first came to the facility. He had taught her everything she knew about cellular biology. He had encouraged her to pursue the most difficult questions. He had believed in her when others said her ideas were too radical. Dr. Minho had been infected 2 months ago. "How is he?" she asked, though she did not want to hear the answer. "Not good. The medical staff thinks he has maybe a week left. 2 at most." Hana closed her eyes. When she opened them again, Kyung was watching her with concern. "You should go to him," he said gently. "He has been asking for you every day." "I know. I hoped we would find something before—" She could not finish the sentence. "We all hoped that." Hana saved her work and shut down the computer. There was no point in continuing. The council had made their decision. The research was over. Her people would die, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. She walked through the empty corridors toward the medical wing. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Through the windows, she could see the sun setting over New Busan. The sky turned from green to deep purple. Soon it would be dark. The medical wing smelled like cleaning chemicals and sadness. Nurses moved quietly between rooms, caring for patients who could not be cured, only comforted. Dr. Minho's room was at the end of the hall. Hana paused outside his door, gathering courage. She had not seen him in a week. She was not sure she was ready to see how much worse he had become, but she owed him this visit. He had given her so much. The least she could do was be with him. Now. She knocked softly and entered. Dr. Minho lay in the hospital bed, looking much older than his 60 years. His once strong frame had become thin and frail. His blue skin had faded to a pale gray, but his eyes were still bright and alert. "Hana," he said, and his voice was weak but warm. "Come in, child. Sit with me." She pulled a chair close to his bed and sat down. "How are you feeling today?" "Like someone who is dying," he said with a small smile. "But still glad to see you." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Outside the window, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. "I heard about the council's decision," Minho said finally. "I am sorry. I failed you. I failed everyone." "No," he said firmly. "You did everything you could. We all did. Sometimes that is not enough, and that is not our fault." Hana felt tears threatening to form in her eyes. "I do not want to give up." "Then do not. Keep working. Keep trying. Even if the council has given up, you do not have to. What is the point? There are no more resources, no more funding, no more hope." Minho reached out and took her hand in his. His skin felt cold and papery. "Hope is not something that comes from outside, Hana. It comes from inside. From the choice to keep going when everything seems impossible." Before Hana could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the medical facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors. An automated voice began speaking over the intercom system. "Security alert. Unidentified vessel has breached planetary defenses. All personnel remain at current locations until further notice." Hana and Minho looked at each other in confusion. Nothing ever breached Kalara's defenses. Their planetary shield system was considered unbreakable. Through the window, they could see lights moving across the sky. Something was falling toward the surface. Something that glowed like a falling star. "What do you think it is?" Hana asked. Minho squeezed her hand. "I do not know. But maybe it is exactly what we need." Neither of them could have imagined how right he was. The crash shook the entire medical facility. Hana felt the building tremble beneath her feet. Outside Dr. Minho's window, they watched a ball of fire streak across the sky before disappearing behind the city's tallest buildings. "That was close," Minho said, his weak voice filled with surprise. Emergency sirens wailed throughout New Busan. The intercom crackled to life again. "All security teams report to crash site immediately. Medical teams stand by. Unknown vessel has made impact in Sector 7. Hana looked at her mentor. "I should go back to the lab. They might need help analyzing whatever that was." "Go." Minho said. But be careful. We do not know what just fell from the sky. Hana squeezed his hand one more time before leaving the room. The corridors were now filled with activity. Security personnel ran toward the exits. Medical staff prepared emergency equipment. For the first time in months, the facility felt alive again. She made her way to the main laboratory where Dr. Kyung was already working at a computer terminal. Several other scientists had returned to their stations. The crash had awakened something in them, a sense of purpose they had lost. What do we know? Hana asked. Kyung looked up from his screen. Not much. The object somehow passed through our planetary shields without triggering the defense systems. That should be impossible. Could it be a meteorite? No. The trajectory was too controlled, too precise. This was a ship of some kind. Dr. So-young, the facility's ethics coordinator, joined their conversation. The security teams are almost at the crash site. We should have visual confirmation soon. They waited in tense silence. Outside, the emergency sirens continued their wailing song. Hana found herself hoping that whatever had crashed might somehow help their situation. It was a foolish hope, but after the council's decision today, she was willing to grasp at anything. The intercom crackled again. This time the voice belonged to Captain Dong Yak, head of planetary security. Central Command, this is Ground Team Alpha. We have reached the crash site. Report status. Ground Team Alpha. There was a long pause. When Captain Dong Yak spoke again, his voice sounded confused. The vessel appears to be a small cargo ship. Unknown design. The hull is heavily damaged, but the main cabin seems intact. We are detecting life signs inside. Another pause. Ground Team Alpha, do you require medical assistance? Negative, Central. Command. The life signs appear stable. We are preparing to make contact. Hana exchanged glances with Kyung and So-young. First contact with an alien species was supposed to follow strict protocols. There were procedures to follow. Safety measures to take. The Kalari had encountered other species before, but always under controlled circumstances. Ground Team Alpha, maintain safe distance until xenobiology teams arrive. Copy that, Central Command. Maintaining... Wait. The radio went silent for several seconds. Ground Team Alpha, report. Central Command, the cabin door just opened. Someone is coming out. Hana felt her heart racing. An alien survivor. Someone from another world who had somehow broken through their defenses. The implications were staggering. Describe the entity, Ground Team Alpha. It appears to be bipedal, roughly our size, wearing some kind of environmental suit. I think it's carrying a toolbox. A toolbox? Hana almost laughed despite the tension. Of all the things an alien might carry, a toolbox seemed remarkably ordinary. The entity is approaching our position. It appears to be waving at us. Weapon status, Ground Team Alpha. All weapons trained on target. The entity has stopped approximately 10 meters from our position. It's removing its helmet. Another long pause. Ground Team Alpha, describe the entity. Central Command, it looks almost exactly like us. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. The main differences are the skin color and facial features. The skin appears to be a light brown color instead of blue. The facial structure is slightly different but recognizably humanoid. Hana found this fascinating. Another species that had evolved along similar lines to the Kalari. The chances of such parallel evolution were incredibly small. The entity is speaking, but we cannot understand the language. Wait, it's pulled out some kind of device. Now it's speaking again. Can you understand it now? Yes, Central Command. The device appears to be a universal translator. The entity says it is from a species called humans. It says its name is J1. Humans. Hana had heard of them. They were relatively new to galactic politics, known for being unpredictable and stubborn. Most other species considered them slightly dangerous because they refused to accept logical limitations. The human is asking for directions to whoever's in charge of fixing impossible problems. Hana blinked. That was an odd first question from someone who had just crashed on an alien planet. Ground Team Alpha, maintain position. Do not let the dead human leave the crash site. Copy that, Central Command. Though I should mention, the human doesn't seem concerned about our weapons. It's sitting down on a piece of debris and drinking something from a metal container. Dr. Kyung shook his head in amazement. This alien crashes through our defenses, emerges from a damaged ship, and then sits down for a drink. Humans are known for unusual behavior, So-young said. The galactic databases describe them as remarkably calm in dangerous situations. The radio crackled again. Central Command, the human is asking about our medical situation. It says it detected high levels of stress hormones in our atmosphere. It wants to know if we need help with something. Hana felt a strange flutter in her chest. This crashed alien was offering to help them? It made no logical sense. The human didn't know anything about their situation. It was stranded on an alien planet, surrounded by armed guards, and its first concern was whether they needed assistance. Ground. Team Alpha, tell the human that medical personnel are en route to examine it. I relayed the message, Central Command. The human says it doesn't need medical attention, but it would like to speak with our scientists. It says it specializes in solving problems that other people think can't be solved. Hana stood up abruptly. Kyung and So-young looked at her in surprise. I need to go there, she said. Absolutely not, So-young replied immediately. First contact. Protocols require full contamination procedures, psychological evaluation, cultural assessment. You can't just walk up to an alien and start a conversation. But what if it can help? What if this human knows something we don't? Hana, be logical. What could one alien possibly know about our plague that we don't already know? Before Hana could answer, the radio crackled once more. Central Command, the human just asked a very specific question. It wants to know if our medical crisis involves cellular regeneration failure. The laboratory fell silent. Hana stared at the radio speaker in shock. How could it possibly know that? Kyung whispered. Captain Donghyuk's voice continued. The human says it has seen similar problems before. It says most species approach regeneration diseases from the wrong direction. It wants to know if we've tried working backwards from the problem instead of forwards toward a solution. Hana was already moving toward the door. I'm going to the crash site. Hana, wait, So-young called after her. No. For months we've found nothing. We've tried everything our science can offer. Maybe it's time to try something else. She paused at the laboratory door and looked back at her colleagues. The council has given up. They say there's no hope. But maybe hope just crashed into our world wearing an environmental suit and carrying a toolbox. Kyung stood up. I'm going with you. This violates every safety protocol we have, So-young protested. So did crashing through our planetary defenses, Hana replied. Maybe it's time we learn to think like humans. She left the laboratory and headed for the transport bay. Behind her, she could hear Kyung and So-young arguing about proper procedures. But she didn't stop. For the first time in months, Dr. Hana felt something she had almost forgotten how to feel. She felt curious. The transport vehicle bounced over the rough terrain as it approached the crash site. Hana sat in the passenger seat while Dr. Kyung drove. Through the windshield, she could see the security perimeter ahead. Bright lights illuminated the wreckage of the human ship. Are you sure about this? Kyung asked for the third time. No, Hana admitted. But I'm sure about giving up. And I don't want to do that. They passed through 2 security checkpoints before reaching the inner perimeter. Captain Donghyuk met them at the final barrier. His expression was a mixture of confusion and concern. Dr. Hana, I must advise against direct contact. We know nothing about this alien's biology or intentions. What has it done since we last heard from you? That's just it. Nothing threatening at all. It finished its drink, asked if we were comfortable, standing around in the cold, and then started examining pieces of its own ship. It seems to be making repairs. Hana looked past the captain toward the crash site. She could see a figure moving around the wreckage, occasionally kneeling down to pick up debris. The human worked with quick, efficient movements. It's trying to fix its ship? That's what it appears to be doing, though I can't understand how. The damage looked fatal to me. Has it asked for anything? Tools? Materials? Just directions to the nearest coffee shop. Captain Donghyuk shook his head. I told it we don't have coffee shops. It seemed genuinely disappointed. Despite everything, Hana found herself smiling. This alien was unlike anything she had expected. I want to talk to it. Dr. Hana, the contamination protocols. Captain, my people are dying. If this human has knowledge that could help, then protocols can wait. Captain Donghyuk studied her face for a moment, then nodded. Very well, but my men stay close, and you wear full protective gear. 20 minutes later, Hana approached the crash site wearing a complete environmental suit. The human looked up as she approached. Even through the helmet's faceplate, she could see his features clearly. The light brown skin Captain Donghyuk had described, dark hair, and eyes that seemed to hold a permanent expression of curiosity. Hello, the human said through his translator device. I'm Jaewon. You must be the scientist I asked to meet. I am Dr. Hana. I lead the cellular biology research team. Great. I have some questions about your plague situation. Hana blinked, in surprise. No introduction? No diplomatic pleasantries? The human jumped straight to the point. How do you know about our medical crisis? Jaewon gestured toward a small device attached to his wrist. Basic atmospheric analysis. High stress hormones, low population activity, reduced industrial output, classic signs of a species dealing with major health problems. You determined all that from atmospheric readings? Well, that and the fact that half your city looks abandoned. Jaewon picked up what looked like a twisted piece of metal from his ship. So tell me about this cellular regeneration failure. Hana found his direct approach both refreshing and unsettling. Our people have always been able to heal quickly from injuries. But 3 years ago, a plague began destroying that ability. Once infected, our cells can no longer repair damage. Jaewon examined the piece of metal in his hands, then casually bent it back into shape with his bare hands. Have you tried enhancing the regeneration instead of restoring it? That makes no sense. The plague destroys regeneration. How could we enhance something that no longer exists? Maybe it doesn't destroy it. Maybe it changes it into something else. Jaewon tossed the repaired metal piece aside and picked up another broken component. What if your plague isn't a disease, but an upgrade that's failing because your biology won't accept it? Hana stared at him. That's impossible. Our computer models show clear cellular breakdown, complete failure of regenerative proteins. Computer models are only as good as their assumptions. Jaewon held up the broken component and squinted at it. Mind if I see your research data? You want to examine our scientific data? Sure. I love puzzles, and this sounds like a really interesting one. Dr. Kyung, who had been listening through the communication system, spoke into Hana's earpiece. Hana, this is highly irregular. We can't just share our research with an unknown alien. But Hana found herself nodding. Yes, you can see our data. An hour later, they were back at the new Busan research facility. Jaewon sat at a computer terminal in Hana's laboratory, scrolling through months of research results. He had removed his environmental suit after medical scans showed he posed no biological threat. Watching him work was fascinating. He would examine a data set for a few seconds, make a small noise of interest or confusion, then move on to the next file. Occasionally, he would go back to previous data and compare it with something new. Dr. Kyung stood behind him, watching nervously. The cellular breakdown patterns are quite clear, he said. The regenerative proteins simply stop functioning. Yeah, I can see that, Jaewon replied without looking away from the screen. But look at this. He pointed to a series of numbers. The proteins aren't disappearing, they're changing. Changing into what? Something your equipment doesn't recognize. Jaewon leaned back in his chair. Your scanners are looking for the old proteins. When they don't find them, they report system failure. But what if the proteins are still there, just in a different form? Hana joined them at the computer. Show me. Jaewon pulled up another data file. Look at these energy readings from infected tissue. See how they're higher than normal? Yes. We assumed that indicated cellular stress. What if it indicates cellular activity? What if your cells are trying to do something new, but they don't know how? Dr. So-young entered the laboratory at that moment. She had been observing from the next room, clearly uncomfortable with their informal approach to first contact. Even if your theory were correct, she said, how would that help us? We can't make our cells learn new functions. Jaewon grinned. It was the first time Hana had seen him smile, and the expression was infectious. Actually, you can. You just need to think about it differently. He turned back to the computer and pulled up a new file. Instead of trying to restore the old regeneration, what if we help your cells figure out the new regeneration? How? Same way you teach anyone anything new. Start with what they already know, then gradually introduce new concepts. Hana shook her head. Cells don't learn. They follow genetic programming. Says who? The question hung in the air. Jaewon looked around at the three Kalari scientists with genuine curiosity, as if he really wanted to know who had made that rule. It's basic. Biology, Kyung said finally. On your world, maybe. But I've seen cells learn before. Hell, I've taught them. Jaewon stood up and walked to one of the laboratory's analysis stations. Mind if I run a few tests? What kind of tests? So-young asked suspiciously. Nothing dangerous. I just want to see how your infected cells respond to different stimuli. He examined the equipment with interest. Nice setup you have here, very precise, though you might want to try being a little less precise sometimes. Less precise? Hana couldn't hide her shock. Precision is the foundation of good science. Sometimes. Other times, precision just gets in the way of discovery. Jaewon began connecting cables between different machines in ways that made Kyung wince. Your cells are trying to tell you something, but you're not listening because you're too focused on hearing what you expect. That equipment isn't designed to be connected that way, Kyung protested. I know. That's what makes it interesting. Jaewon finished his modifications and looked around. Now, do you have any tissue samples from infected patients? Of course, but great. Let's see what they're really trying to do. Over the next 2 hours, Jaewon conducted experiments that violated every principle of proper laboratory procedure. He mixed samples that should never be combined. He used equipment in ways that made the safety systems alarm constantly. He asked the tissue samples questions as if they could answer him. And somehow, impossibly, he began getting results. Look at this, he said, pointing to a display screen that showed cellular activity in real time. When I stop trying to force the cells to behave normally, they start showing organized patterns. Hana stared at the screen in amazement. The infected cells were indeed showing organization, but not the kind she recognized. They're forming new structures, she whispered. Exactly. Your plague isn't destroying your regeneration. It's trying to upgrade it to something better. The problem is, your cells don't know how to make the transition. So they're stuck between the old system and the new one, Kyung said, understanding dawning in his voice. Right. Like someone trying to learn a new language but still thinking in their old language. Everything gets confused. So-young looked skeptical. Even if that's true, how do we help them make the transition? Jaewon's grin returned. Same way you help anyone learn something new. You give them practice, lots and lots of practice. He turned back to his improvised equipment setup. But first, I need more coffee, and maybe something to eat. Saving civilizations always makes me hungry. Despite everything, Hana found herself laughing. This strange human had just challenged everything she thought she knew about biology, violated numerous safety protocols, and somehow made more progress in 2 hours than her team had made in months, and he was worried about being hungry. "I think," she said to Kyung and So-young, "we need to learn how to think like a human." For 3 days straight, Jae-won worked alongside Hana in the laboratory. He slept on a cot in the corner when exhaustion overtook him, which wasn't often. The human seemed to run on coffee and pure determination. Hana had never worked with anyone like him. Where Kalari scientists followed careful procedures step by step, Jae-won jumped between ideas like a child playing games. He would test one theory, get distracted by an unexpected result, chase that discovery down a completely different path, then somehow circle back to his original idea with new insights. "This is madness," Dr. So-young said on the second day, watching Jae-won balance on a chair to reach equipment on a high shelf instead of using the proper laboratory ladder. "Maybe," Hana replied. "But it's working." And it was working. Jae-won's unconventional approach had revealed things about the plague that months of proper research had missed. The infected cells weren't dying randomly. They were trying to reorganize themselves into something new, but they kept failing at a crucial step in the process. "It's like they're missing an instruction manual," Jae-won explained while examining tissue samples under a microscope. "They know they're supposed to change, but they don't know how to finish the change." "So we need to provide instructions?" Hana asked. "Not instructions exactly, more like training wheels." Dr. Kyung looked confused. "Training wheels? It's a human thing. When children learn to ride bicycles, we put extra wheels on the sides to keep them stable while they practice. Once they learn balance, we remove the training wheels." "And you think we can do something similar with cells?" Jae-won grinned. "I don't think we can. I know we can. I've been testing it for the past 6 hours. He led them to a workstation where several tissue samples sat in specialized containers. "I've been introducing damaged cells to the transition process gradually. Small steps, instead of trying to force the whole change at once." Hana looked at the samples through the viewing port. The infected tissue looked different somehow, more organized, more alive. "The cells are learning," she whispered. "Exactly. But here's the really interesting part." Jae-won pulled up data on his computer screen. "Once they learn the new regeneration process, they're better at healing than your original cells ever were." The implications hit Hana like a physical blow. "You're saying the plague is actually trying to improve us?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. Something introduced an upgrade to your species, but your biology was too stable to accept rapid change. So the upgrade got stuck halfway, creating the plague symptoms." Dr. Kyung sat down heavily. "If that's true, then we've been approaching this completely wrong." "Yep. Instead of trying to cure the plague, you need to help it succeed." Dr. So-young shook her head. "This is all theoretical. Even if you're right, how could we safely test such a treatment on living patients?" Before Jae-won could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. The intercom crackled to life. "All personnel to emergency stations. Council security forces are approaching the facility. Dr. Hana and the alien visitor report to the main entrance immediately." Hana felt her stomach drop. "They're here to stop our research." Through the laboratory windows, they could see vehicles approaching the facility. Official government transports carrying members of the Kalari Council. "Why would they want to stop research that's showing progress?" Jae-won asked. "Because we're violating protocols," So-young explained. "Unauthorized alien contact, unsupervised experimentation. The Council takes these things very seriously. More seriously than finding a cure for a plague that's killing your species?" "The Council believes the situation is hopeless. They've decided to focus on preserving dignity rather than pursuing false hope." Jae-won stared at her. "False hope?" "We just proved the plague can be reversed." "Proved is a strong word," So-young said carefully. You've shown promising results in tissue samples. That's very different from treating living patients. Then let's treat a living patient. The laboratory fell silent. Hana looked at Jaewon in shock. You can't be serious. Why not? We know the treatment works on cells. We know the process is safe. The only question is whether it works on a complete organism. The only question? Dr. Kyung's voice rose. What about informed consent, safety trials, long-term effect studies? What about the fact that people are dying right now while you study the problem to death? Hana found herself caught between human logic and Kalari caution. Everything Jaewon said made sense, but it went against every principle of responsible medical research. The intercom spoke again. Dr. Hana, report to the main entrance. The council is waiting. I have to go, she said. Wait. Jaewon caught her arm gently. Before you talk to your council, you should know something. This treatment we've developed? It's not just theoretical anymore. What do you mean? Jaewon held up his left hand. Across the palm was a fresh cut, about 3 inches long. I tested it on myself 2 hours ago. Cut myself with a lab knife then. Applied our cellular training solution. Hana stared at the cut. It was already partially healed, showing signs of regeneration that should have taken days. You tested experimental alien medicine on yourself? Had to know if it worked. Besides, human cells are pretty adaptable. If it was going to kill me, I figured I'd find out quickly. That was incredibly dangerous and stupid. Yeah, probably. But now we know it works. Jaewon's expression grew serious. Hana, your people are giving up. But this plague isn't a death sentence. It's an opportunity, a chance to become something better than you were before. How can I convince them of that? Tell them the truth, show them the data, and if they still won't listen, he shrugged. Sometimes you have to be willing to break the rules to do what's right. Hana left the laboratory with her mind spinning. As she walked toward the main entrance, she thought about Dr. Minho lying in the medical wing, about all the Kalari who had already died, about the choice between following safe procedures and taking desperate chances. The council was waiting in the facility's main lobby. 5 elderly Kalari in formal robes, their faces showing the stern disapproval she had expected. Chancellor Yoonji stepped forward. Dr. Hana, you have violated numerous protocols by allowing unauthorized contact with an alien entity. The human has been helping with our research. The human, said Councillor Dong-hyuk coldly, has contaminated your work with unscientific methods. We are here to restore proper order. Our research is showing promising results. Your research is showing false hope, Chancellor Yoonji replied. We have reviewed your preliminary reports. The aliens' theories are based on speculation, not proven. Science. What if the speculation is correct? Then it can be properly tested through established channels over the next several years. If your species survives that long. The casual way she said it made Hana angry. If our species survives, we're talking about a potential cure, and you're worried about proper channels? We are worried about maintaining dignity in the face of extinction, Councillor Dong-hyuk said. Your alien friend offers impossible promises. False hope is crueler than honest despair. What if it's not false? Then prove it. Through proper testing, with appropriate safety measures, following established scientific protocols. Hana thought about Jaewon's hand, about the healing cut that shouldn't have been possible. And if someone dies while we're following protocols? People are already dying, Dr. Hana. At least they can die with dignity instead of chasing fantasies. Behind the council members, Hana could see Jaewon approaching. He had ignored orders to stay in the laboratory. Typical human behavior. Excuse me, he said politely. I couldn't help overhearing. Did you just say it's better to die with dignity than live with hope? Chancellor Yoonji turned to face him. The situation is not that simple, alien. Actually, it kind of is. Either we try to save people or we don't. Everything else is just politics. You understand nothing about our culture or our values? Jae-won nodded. You're right. I don't understand a culture that chooses death over the chance of life. But I don't have to understand it to know it's wrong. The council members bristled at his directness. Hana held her breath, waiting for their response. Your arrogance is exactly what we expected from humans, Councillor Dong-hyuk said. Maybe. But our arrogance might be exactly what you need. Chancellor Yoonji stepped closer to Jae-won. You offer unproven theories and dangerous experiments. Why should we trust you? Jae-won was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was gentler. Because I'm not asking you to trust me, I'm asking you to trust yourselves. Your scientists are brilliant. Your technology is incredible. You have everything you need to beat this plague. You just need to stop being afraid of trying. He paused, looking at each council member in turn. I've seen dozens of species face extinction. You know what separates the ones who survive from the ones who don't? The survivors never stop fighting, even when the situation looks hopeless, even when the smart money says to give up. And if your treatment fails? Chancellor Yoonji asked. If it makes the situation worse, then at least you'll go down swinging. Faho. Lobby fell silent. Hana watched the council members exchange glances, having a conversation with their eyes that she couldn't read. Finally, Chancellor Yoonji spoke. Show us your proof, human. Real proof. Not tissue samples or computer models. Show us that your treatment can actually save lives. Jae-won nodded. I'll need a volunteer. Someone who's willing to take the risk. That's impossible. No ethical review board would approve human testing of an unproven treatment. Then it's a good thing I'm not asking for approval. Hana knew what she had to do. The choice was clear, even if the consequences weren't. I'll do it. Everyone turned to stare at her. Dr. Hana, you're not infected, Dr. Kyung pointed out. No, but I know someone who is. Someone who's been asking to help with this research since the beginning. She looked directly at Chancellor Yoonji. Dr. Minho has been dying for 2 months. He's got maybe days left. If anyone deserves the choice between certain death and possible hope, it's him. The Chancellor considered this. You're asking us to let you perform experimental treatment on a dying man. I'm asking you to let a dying man choose his own ending. After a long moment, Chancellor Yoonji nodded. Very well. We will allow one test. But if Dr. Minho dies from your treatment, this research ends immediately. Hana felt relief and terror in equal measure. And if he lives, then we will reconsider our position. It wasn't much, but it was a chance. Sometimes, Hana thought, a chance was all you needed. Dr. Minho listened to Hana's explanation without interruption. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Outside his hospital room window, the sun was setting over New Busan. So this human believes our plague is actually an upgrade that got stuck halfway, he finally said. That's the theory, and his tests on tissue samples support it. But it's never been tried on a living patient. No. Minho smiled weakly. Well, I suppose I'm an ideal test subject then. What's the worst that could happen? I die. A few days early? Minho, this is serious. The treatment could cause severe pain, organ failure. We don't know what side effects might occur. And if I do nothing, I die slowly and painfully anyway. Minho reached for her hand. Hana, I've been ready to die for weeks, but the chance to live? The chance to help save our people? That's worth any risk. 2 hours later, the medical wing had been transformed into an emergency treatment center. Jae-won had spent the time preparing his cellular training solution while the council watched his every move. Dr. Kyung monitored all the medical equipment. Dr. So-young documented everything for the official record. The treatment works in 3 stages, Jae-won explained as he prepared the injection. First, we introduce helper proteins that will guide the cellular transition. Second, we stimulate the damaged cells to begin reorganizing. Third, we provide energy supplements to fuel the regeneration process. Chancellor Yunji watched from beside Minho's bed. How long before we know if it's working? If it works, we should see initial results within an hour. Full healing might take 6 to 12 hours. And if it doesn't work? Jae-won's expression was grim. Then Dr. Minho will probably go into organ failure within 30 minutes. Despite everything, Minho chuckled. I appreciate the honesty, human. Ready? Jae-won asked. Minho nodded. Let's make history. The injection took only seconds. Jae-won carefully administered the cellular training solution into Minho's bloodstream, then stepped back. Everyone in the room held their breath. For the first 10 minutes, nothing happened. Minho's vital signs remained stable, but showed no improvement. The plague symptoms continued unchanged. Maybe we should have started with a smaller dose, Dr. Kyung whispered. Then Minho gasped. What's happening? Chancellor Yunji demanded. Pain, Minho said through gritted teeth. But different than before. This feels like something working instead of something breaking. His vital signs began fluctuating wildly. Heart rate up, then down. Blood pressure spiking and dropping. The medical monitors beeped constant warnings. His system is destabilizing, Dr. Soyoung reported. No, Jae-won said, watching the readouts carefully. His system is reorganizing. The cells are learning new patterns. How can you be sure? Because I've seen this before. The chaos comes first. Then, the healing. For 20 minutes, Minho's body fought against itself. Everyone in the room watched helplessly as his vital signs swung between dangerous extremes. Twice, Dr. Kyung reached for emergency medicine, and twice Jae-won stopped him. Let the process work, the human said. If we interfere now, we could stop the transition permanently. And if we don't interfere, he could die right now. Maybe. But if he dies, it won't be from the plague. Then suddenly everything stabilized. Minho's vital signs settled into normal ranges. His breathing became easier. The gray color began leaving his skin, replaced by healthy blue. I feel different, he said, his voice stronger than it had. Been in weeks. Different how? Hana asked. Like I've been asleep for months and just woke up. Dr. Kyung ran a quick medical scan. His eyes widened as he read the results. Impossible. The cellular regeneration is not just restored, it's enhanced. His healing rate is 3 times normal levels. Jae-won grinned. Told you it was an upgrade. Over. The next 6 hours, they watched Minho's recovery accelerate. Old injuries healed completely. Muscle tone improved. Even his eyesight became sharper. By morning, he looked 20 years younger. Word spread quickly through New Busan. Within days, the story had reached every Kalari settlement on the planet. The human had performed a miracle. The plague could be cured, but not everyone was celebrating. This changes everything, Chancellor Yunji said during an emergency council session. If we distribute this treatment widely, we're fundamentally altering our species. We're saving our species, Hana argued. Are we? Or are we destroying what made us Kalari in the first place? The debate had been raging for 3 days. Half the council wanted to begin immediate mass treatment. The other half worried about the consequences of such dramatic biological change. Councillor Dong-hyuk led the opposition. We've always prided ourselves on logical thinking and emotional control. But look at Dr. Minho now. He's more energetic, more passionate, more human-like. It was true. Minho's personality had changed along with his biology. He laughed more, spoke more passionately about his work, showed emotions that Kalari typically kept hidden. Is that necessarily bad? Dr. Kyung asked. It's not what we are, Dong-hyuk replied. If we all take this treatment, do we remain Kalari, or do we become something else entirely? Jae-won, who had been quiet during most of the debate, finally spoke. Up. Does it matter what you call yourselves? You'll be alive. Your children will be alive. Your culture and knowledge will survive. But our identity will evolve, like everything else. J1 looked around the room. I've met dozens of species in the galaxy. You know what I've learned? Identity isn't about staying the same. It's about staying true to what matters most. And what matters most to us? You tell me. But from what I've seen, you value knowledge, wisdom, and taking care of each other. None of that has to change. Chancellor Yunji considered this. What about the enhanced abilities? The increased regeneration and improved physical capabilities? What about them? They give us advantages we didn't earn. Abilities beyond our natural evolution. Jaewon shrugged. So? My species uses tools to fly faster than any bird. We use computers to think better than any brain. We use medicine to live longer than any natural lifespan. Improvement isn't cheating. It's surviving. Dr. So-young raised another concern. What if other species see us as a threat? Enhanced Kalari could upset the galactic balance of power. Let me worry about that, Jaewon said. Humans have a pretty good reputation for dealing with species that get too ambitious. You would protect us? From others? Sure. From yourselves? He grinned. That's your job. The council session continued for hours. In the end, they reached a compromise. The treatment would be offered to all Kalari, but on a voluntary basis. Those who wanted to maintain their original biology could do so. Those who chose enhancement would be supported. And what about you? Human? Chancellor Yunji asked as the session ended. Will you stay to help us through this transition? Jaewon looked out the window toward the spaceport where his repaired ship waited. For a while. But eventually, I'll have to move on. Why? Because there are other species out there facing their own impossible problems. And somebody has to help them figure out that impossible doesn't mean hopeless. Hana felt a strange sadness at the thought of him leaving. How do you do it? How do you stay optimistic when you see so much suffering? Easy, Jaewon said. I remember that every time we solve one impossible problem, we prove that the next impossible problem might not be impossible either. He stood up and stretched. Besides, hope is contagious. Once you catch it, you can't help but spread it around. 6 months later, New Kalara had become a very different place. Nearly 80% of the population had chosen the enhancement. Treatment. The planet buzzed with new energy and activity. Enhanced Kalari worked faster, thought more creatively, and healed from setbacks more quickly. They were still logical and thoughtful, but they had gained something equally valuable, the ability to dream big dreams and pursue them relentlessly. Hana had taken the treatment herself and found that it enhanced not just her physical abilities, but her intellectual ones as well. She could process complex problems faster and see connections she had missed before. She was working late in her laboratory when the communication alert sounded. A message was coming in from deep space. The transmission was from Jaewon. Hey, Hana, his voice said through the speakers. Hope things are going well on New Kalara. I'm currently helping a species called the Toraki deal with a problem involving quantum consciousness transfer. It's complicated, but I think we're making progress. She smiled at the casual way he described what sounded like an incredibly complex situation. Anyway, I wanted you to know that I've been getting reports from other worlds about your people. Apparently, enhanced Kalari are showing up all over the galaxy, helping solve problems nobody thought could be solved. You're becoming quite the reputation for turning impossible situations around. Hana felt pride swell in her chest. Her people were spreading hope throughout the galaxy, just as Jaewon had brought hope to them. I guess hope really is contagious, Jaewon's message continued. Keep up the good work. And remember, the next time someone tells you something is impossible, that just means they haven't figured out how to do it yet. The message ended, but Hana continued staring at the communication device. Through her laboratory window, she could see the lights of New Kalara sparkling in the distance. a city full of people who had been given a second chance at life. She thought about all the impossible problems still waiting to be solved. 1 year after Jaewon's arrival, Hana stood in the observation deck of the new Kalara space station. Through the massive windows, she could see 3 ships preparing for departure. Each one carried a team of enhanced Kalari heading to different parts of the galaxy. The transformation of her world had been remarkable. What started as a dying civilization had become something unprecedented, a species that combined logical thinking with unshakable optimism. Enhanced Kalari were now known throughout the galaxy as problem solvers, who refused to accept defeat. "Dr. Hana," a voice said behind her. She turned to see Dr. Minho approaching. He looked healthy and energetic, showing no signs of his former illness. The enhancement had not only saved his life, but given him decades more to live. "The council meeting is about to begin," he said. They walked together toward the station's main conference room. Through the corridors, Hana could see the busy activity of New Kalara's expanding space program. Enhanced Kalari worked alongside aliens from dozens of species, all collaborating on projects that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. The conference room was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. The enhanced Kalari had made so many allies that their monthly meetings had become major diplomatic events. Chancellor Yunji called the meeting to order. "We have several reports from our assistance missions," she announced. "Dr. Kyung, please update us on the Thorian situation." Dr. Kyung stood up. He had been one of the first to volunteer for off-world missions after taking the enhancement treatment. "The Thorian crystal plague has been completely eliminated. It turns out the problem wasn't the crystals themselves, but the way the Thorians were trying to remove them. Once we helped them understand that the crystals were actually symbiotic organisms, they were able to form a beneficial relationship instead of fighting a losing war." Applause filled the room. The Thorian crisis had been considered hopeless by every major government in the galaxy. "Dr. So-young, what about the Vega colony situation?" Dr. So-young smiled. "The atmospheric processor has been repaired and improved. The colonists will be able to breathe normally within 6 months. We also helped them develop new farming techniques that will make the colony self-sufficient." More applause. Hana felt proud of how her colleagues had embraced their new role as galactic problem solvers. "Any word from Jaewon?" someone asked. Chancellor Yunji checked her notes. He's currently working with the Andromedans on what he describes as a really interesting puzzle involving time dilation and crop rotation. He says he'll send a full report when he figures out what's going on. Everyone laughed. Jaewon's messages had become legendary for their casual treatment of impossible situations. "Which brings us to today's main topic," Chancellor Yunji continued. "We've received a request for assistance from the Outer Rim territories. Apparently, an entire star system is facing extinction due to what they describe as physics acting incorrectly." Murmurs of interest filled the room. Even for enhanced Kalari, physics problems were particularly challenging. "Any volunteers?" Hana stood up. "I'll go." Dr. Minho looked surprised. "Hana, you've been working non-stop for months. Don't you want to rest?" "I can rest when everyone in the galaxy stops having impossible problems." The room erupted in laughter and applause. Hana realized she sounded exactly like Jaewon, and the thought made her smile. After the meeting, Hana returned to her quarters to pack for the mission. As she gathered her equipment, she reflected on how much had changed since that desperate day when Jaewon crashed through their planetary defenses. The Kalari were no longer a dying species. They had become something new, a people who carried hope to the darkest corners of the galaxy. They had learned that impossible problems were just problems that hadn't been solved yet. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Hana activated her communication device and saw Jaewon's familiar face appear on the screen. "Hey, Hana," he said with his characteristic grin. "I heard you volunteered for the Outer Rim mission. Physics acting incorrectly sounds like my kind of problem. Are you offering to help? Actually, I'm offering to meet you there. The Andromedan situation turned out to be easier than expected. Turns out time dilation isn't a problem when you stop trying to fight it and start working with it instead. Hana laughed. Of course it was that simple. The best solutions usually are. Anyway, I thought we could tackle this new problem together. It's been a while since we worked as a team. I'd like that. Great. I'll see you at the Outer Rim Rendezvous point in 2 weeks. And Hana? Yes. Bring coffee. Lots of coffee. Physics problems always require extra caffeine. The transmission ended, leaving Hana staring at the blank screen. She felt excitement building in her chest, another impossible problem to solve, another chance to prove that hope could triumph over despair. 2 weeks later, Hana's ship dropped, out of hyperspace near the edge of the Outer Rim territories. The first thing she noticed was how wrong everything looked. Stars that should have been bright were dim. Planets that should have been spherical were oddly elongated. Even space itself seemed to shimmer in ways that hurt to look at. Jaewon's ship was already waiting at the rendezvous coordinates. His voice came through the communication system as soon as her ship appeared. "Welcome to the weirdest part of the galaxy," he said cheerfully. "I've been here for 3 days, and I still can't figure out what's causing this." "Any theories?" Few dozen. But they all sound crazy, even by my standards. Hana docked her ship with Jaewon's and transferred over. He looked exactly the same as when he had left New Kalara. Slightly messy hair, tool-stained clothes, and that perpetual expression of curiosity. "So what exactly is happening here?" she asked. Jaewon led her to his ship's observation deck. Through the window, she could see the distorted space around them. "Near as I can tell, someone or something is rewriting the fundamental laws of physics. In this region, gravity works differently, light behaves strangely, even time seems to move at different speeds in different areas. That should be impossible." "Should be. But here we are." Jaewon handed her a cup of coffee. "The local species are terrified. Their technology doesn't work properly. Their planets are becoming uninhabitable. They think it's some kind of attack." "Is it?" "I don't think so. The changes seem random, not directed. Like someone is experimenting rather than attacking." Hana sipped her coffee and studied the distorted space around them. What if it's not someone experimenting? What if it's something natural that we don't understand? Like what? "I don't know yet. But when we first met, you taught me that the best way to solve impossible problems is to question our assumptions about what's possible." Jaewon grinned. "Look at you, thinking like a human." "I learned from the best." They spent the next several hours analyzing the physics distortions. Jaewon approached the problem with his usual combination of scientific rigor and wild creativity. Hana applied her enhanced analytical abilities to find patterns in the chaos. "Wait," she said suddenly. "Look at this data pattern." Jaewon examined her findings. "It looks almost like music?" "Exactly. What if the physics distortions aren't random? What if they're following some kind of harmonic sequence? You think space itself is singing?" "Maybe. Or maybe something is using space as an instrument." They worked together for 3 more days, following the musical patterns through the distorted physics. Gradually, they began to understand what was happening. "It's not an attack or an experiment," Hana said as the pieces fell into place. "It's art." "Art?" "Someone is using the fundamental forces of the universe to create a massive artistic expression. The physics distortions are intentional, but they're not meant to be harmful. They're meant to be beautiful." Jaewon stared at her. "That's either brilliant or insane. With humans, what's the difference?" They laughed together, and Hana realized how much she had missed working with him. The human brought out something in her that enhanced Kalari biology couldn't. Pure joy in the process of discovery. "So how do we contact an artist who paints with physics?" Jaewon asked. "The same way we've solved every other impossible problem," Hana replied. We figure it out as we go. It took them another week to establish communication with the entity responsible for the physics distortions. As they had suspected, it was an artist from a dimension where physical laws were more like suggestions than rules. The entity had been using this region of space as a canvas, unaware that its art was threatening entire civilizations. Once they explained the situation, the entity was horrified and immediately began modifying its creation to be safe for local species. Within days, the physics distortions had been transformed from chaotic threats into beautiful light displays that actually improved conditions in the region. Another impossible problem solved, Jaewon said as they watched the artistic light show through his ship's windows. Another species saved, Hana added. Another day at the office for the galaxy's premier problem-solving team. Hana looked at him. Is that what we are now? I think we always were. We just needed time to figure it out. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the transformed stars dance in patterns that defied physics, but somehow made perfect sense. What's next? Hana asked. There's always something next. Distress calls from a dozen systems. Problems nobody else wants to tackle. Impossible situations waiting to become possible.